It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
I don't want to lose. I want to win!
I need professional help.
Sports Betting Weekly.
Sports Betting Weekly, sponsored by EasySportsData.com. The books use data, shouldn't you too? And this is Easy Sports Data, like the preschoolers use. EasySportsData.com.
I win here and I win there. Now what?
Sports Betting Weekly.
I want to win!
Here comes the money.
Here we go.
Money talk. Here comes the money.
You should also check out SportsBettingLessons.com. You'll learn some old tricks because sometimes how you bet is more important than who you bet. SportsBettingLessons.com.
Man, I could hear both of you guys. You know, it's funny because this is really cool. Remember, we used to have to get up at like 6:30 in the morning to get to the ESPN radio station so we could do our show from 8 to 9. And then we had to wait to get the show so we could put it out on the podcast. And with the Worldwide Sports Radio Network and Belly Up Sports Podcast Network, oh my God, it is just so much easier. It really is. So we're going to do this week. We've got a full slate of games to cover. We are going to talk about some live action. We're going to talk about some horse racing. We're going to talk about some UFC on Fight Island. We're going to talk about the AFC and NFC championship games. We're going to do a lot of it. But first, what we're going to do is kind of have the guys talk for a little bit so I can look at the board and get a feel for what I need to get caught up on. So, Blackhawk West, what's on the top of your head right now?
Well, you and I exchanged some texts yesterday, and over the weekend, I discovered something I hadn't discovered before, and it's always cool to learn something new, but I probably could have saved myself a little bit of pain had I discovered it sooner. But I don't know if all sports betting apps have the function, but I went into my bet slip, and there's the action you have queued, but then there's the side that if you click on it, it's open bets. And if you click on open bets, it offers you a cash out. So there's actually an early out to either you're holding a win and you want to get out of it, or you're about to lose. A good example of where that would have helped a lot of people was Chiefs are up by 12. Well, at that point, they're covering the spread. You could probably get a little bit over a full unit back on it if you hit cash out right then and there. Once that shifted to where the spread was no longer covered, you probably would have only got about a half a unit back, but you could have stopped the bleeding right then and there. I haven't paid too much attention to it, but it's certainly going to be a part of what I look at now, especially, if we look to this weekend, we look at Tampa. Tampa's a dog, and we'll get into that pick later, but because they're a dog, if for some reason they jump out 7-0, 3-0, 10-0, I think that cash out function may give you more than your initial unit if you choose to get out now, if you're on the Green Bay side of things. And I got to tell you, there's a lot of people that could have saved themselves a lot of times this year, having knowledge of that, rather than just take the full loss. I'm going to take it now. I don't know what it does on the parlay side. If you're on the last leg of your parlay and you're winning it, does it give you not quite the full pay? If you're on the parlay side and you're losing, I don't know that it gives you anything. But it was a really cool thing I found, and it's almost like another live bet. It's just another tool that we have so that we're not absorbing full losses, or so that you can just cash out because you're done. You won something and you just don't want to ride out the rest of the game.
Yeah, no, it's been around not that long now. In 2015 on our show, we had Ian from Prop Swap on. Now, you may have seen Prop Swap. They've grown since then, and that's what they've been doing. But they were doing it for tickets long before most of the books here in America. Now, over in Europe, from what I understand, it's a very common thing. But as you know, those European sports books are leap years ahead of where we are here in America, especially Vegas, because Vegas has that Nevada Vegas gambling commission thing on top of them holding their thumb on their neck. So it really does not allow them to do a lot of things. And we saw a little bit that with the Olympics, with the betting on University of Nevada, Las Vegas games, betting on the politics, those kind of things. But we're going to actually have Prop Swap on Ian on starting next week, I think, once or twice a month with whatever tickets he has live. So after Sunday's games, which we'll talk about in the second or third segment, we will know the last two teams. So, yeah, if you have a live ticket on Green Bay or Tampa Bay, it's been a long season to get here. If you bet, say you were just messing around with some of that WTF money that Mo and I talk about, and you put money, $100 on somebody, and I don't know, 10, 12 to 1, all of a sudden, maybe, you know what, you rode it all season, and you want to take some of that money, and it really, Wes, becomes a situation where everybody wins. The house is saying, hey, we'd rather you take this just in case it wins. And the house knows what they're doing, so they're offering you a cash out that makes sense for them because, as you know, Wes, they're on the other side offering guys with the other side the same cash out, different amount.
It's been around. I believe you. I just discovered it this weekend, and I feel ashamed that I have been into this sports investing and playing the action for as long as I have, and I didn't know that I could have saved myself several times this season. Nonetheless,
that's where
it's a great thing.
I've never used it. And the reason I've never used it is because I'm going the other way. I don't want less bets, right? Because if you cash out, you have less bets. I want more bets. Again, that 1-800.
Well, and typically right. Well, and we talk about the live action trying to punch your way out of it. And, looking forward to this weekend, there's not a lot of different ways that you're going to be able to slug your way out of a loss. There's just not enough action out there unless you start digging deep into props. But I think these games are going to show us what they are. And it's probably going to go that way. And it's just not a normal week, championship Sunday. So.
Right. Okay. So let's talk to John from GMF Sports Consultants. Now, John, I literally, I talk to you guys throughout the week, but we don't really have in-depth conversations. So what's going on in your brain when it comes to this weekend? What are you thinking?
I'm thinking it's going to be exciting games to watch. I mean, on both sides of the board, the NFC and the AFC, we have some really, really good teams facing each other. And I mean, kind of marquee quarterbacks that are going to go against each other. Obviously, you got Brady and Rodgers, and then, Mahomes. Hopefully, it looks like he's on track to play after whatever concussion protocol or maybe some neck damage that he had. But he looks good to go. So I'm really excited. My brother-in-law is a big KC fan. If you've been watching the show, then you kind of know that I've been tailing Buffalo for a while. So I actually have a side bet. Winner gets whoever wins. I'm going for Buffalo. My brother-in-law, KC fan, he's going for KC. So whoever loses has to pay for a steak dinner. So I actually I have a steak dinner on the line for this game. So, yeah.
So let's talk to John. What we need you to do, John, remember, because next week's kind of a weird week. We're going to be talking to some people outside the industry going forward that are people you might not know of, but if you're a sports bettor, they can help you. And really, you're one of them. So we want to make sure by next week you got a post-football deal for our guys ready to rock and roll, okay?
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll put together some packages, maybe some season deals, and then obviously we'll be going into Major League Baseball here soon, within a month or two. So I'll probably put together a couple package options for people. So.
All right, so then what we're looking at is a couple other things to talk about. We have some live action to look at. Now, last week, it was funny. We did terrible on the show live action, but I found this little team called Gonzaga that was only winning by 3 at halftime, and I did okay with that live action because, the game hadn't started till we were off the air, and the next thing I see, I think they're playing St. Mary's, and they were given. I want to say they were given 13.5 in the second half. They ended up winning the game by 24.5. So I had them in live action at 24.5. They won by 25. But it wasn't one of those, you win by half a point barely. They had the ball, they had the lead, and they were dribbling. There's nothing worse than getting a late three that banks in as a prayer shot in basketball. It's one of the reasons my old man always told me, God bless his soul, don't bet basketball. But so we're going to look at that, and what I wanted to do is see if you guys had any action already that I could look at and get a feel, because remember, that's what we did with your Indiana game last week. John, do you have any action tonight already that we could look at?
We actually do. I'm watching this game right now. I'm actually on NHL. So we're on the Tampa Bay Lightning side. They opened at minus 160. Tampa Bay's, I believe, the second favorite to win the cup behind the Knights. Let's go Knights. They're very strong, obviously, but they're actually down 1-0. And I haven't checked. We just started the second period. I haven't checked, but in game that you were getting plus money. So they went from minus 160 to where if you took them to win the game, I believe you were getting plus money. Last time I checked, I think it was around plus 120. It might even be higher now since we're a couple minutes inside of the second period here. So, that's a big swing.
Yeah, I'll be looking at that. What about you, Wes? Anything that was on the board? I know you're a hockey guy, but you told me you're being patient with hockey.
Yeah. So, but John just said it. That's the exact game I'm doing. But I'm looking at it in a different way. The value I see in that game, Columbus finds a way to lose games late. I mean, they have this year. But what I like in this game right now, if you look, Tampa's scoring 4 or 5 goals a game. If you look at the team over, Tampa, 2.5 goals. I realize we're 15 minutes to go in the second, but they can score really fast, and they just started hitting. They just started hitting them real hard. Columbus typically doesn't block as many shots as they blocked this game, so it's a plus 150 payoff for Tampa scoring over 2.5 goals. I jumped in it at plus 145, and I'm probably going to dip in again if we go another minute without a goal.
We're at with that right now, and what I'm going to do is that's not available on one of the books that I use. It's only at team total 1.5 at minus 200, and there's a big difference. Now, what I'll normally do, and part of this is the West strategy, and if you like it once, why don't you like it twice? I would go with the 2.5, 3.5, and maybe even the 4.5, because as I kind of structure it, as long as I hit that first one, I'm okay. I get most of my money back. If I hit the first 2, I win money, and if I hit the third one, well, it's a big payoff, Any other things, John? Let me ask you.
The other one I see in this Tampa.
I'm listening. What else in the Tampa Bay?
I was just going to say, Chaz, you and I have talked before about these odd spreads. Both teams right now, the team over under are 2.5, but it's a 4.5 combined over under for this Tampa Columbus game. Just an odd thing.
Books, and neither of mine are offering me the 2.5 on the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm getting 1.5 over. So if you like 2.5, I got to take the 1.5, right? And that's minus 182. What did you say your 2.5 is?
It just jumped because they went a little bit more time without a score. It just jumped to plus 165.
And you're talking about just betting them for the game, right?
They could lose.
I'm talking. I apologize. Originally, we talked with John, who said that was his play. Now they're at plus 140 for the game. That's what you were talking about, John?
That's what I was talking about. Yeah. So they would have to obviously win the game. And then on Wes's side, he was just talking about the total goals scored, where all Tampa Bay needs to do is obviously score 3 goals. They could lose, but Wes would still hit his bet in that case scenario. So we got a couple of different options. But, I mean, that's plus money, especially if you like Tampa Bay, where I said at minus 160. Now you can jump in and you can get them at plus 140, or you can go with the point total too there. So some options for hockey tonight.
What I'm looking at is I'm going to take all of your suggestions and I'm going to make those our 3 plays for tonight. So what we're doing is we're going with we're going to take the 1.5 goals over. We're going to take the 2.5 goals over, and then we're going to take the 140. Tampa Bay just wins the game outright. And I threw in one more play because I couldn't get the 2.5, and I listened to what Wes said. Blackhawk Wes said basically it's not making sense. If you add those totals together, it doesn't make the over. So I went the over 3.5, and I got that at minus 224, which is on the high end that I'm going to go with live action. I tried it to stay under 200. But again, when you've got a lot of live plays in, it really becomes a situation where what does it take to get all your money back? And if that's the worst case scenario, guys, who's not going to take that every day of the week? I mean, I would go if I could bet every single day, and at the end of the week have $7 or $8 more in my account. I'm happy with that. Don't get me wrong. I cashed out this week with Bitcoin, but I was really busy, so I didn't get a chance to take the Bitcoin out of my account, and so I lost 10% of my withdrawal this weekend because we talked about how Bitcoin goes up and down. Unfortunately, I wanted that money. I was going to use it for something, so I didn't. I just didn't pay attention. But with the new administration coming in and then putting, they really don't like Bitcoin. Traditional people don't like Bitcoin because the bad people use Bitcoin too. So, unfortunately, that's a story to tell. That's the third time that I've left money in Bitcoin, and once I've won money, twice I lost money. So. It's a very unique investor. There's not too many of your portfolios, guys, that you look at and it goes down like a bouncing ball, up and down, up and down, up and down. Just amazing. All right, so I'm going to pay attention to that just in case they go and they add that 2.5 in because I might take that as well. So all those bets are in. We're good. I got the 3.5 too, and we are going to slide over and talk about. Before we go to break and go to the games of Sunday and the UFC and the horse racing, we got to talk about the last 2 weeks. The wild card and the division rounds. I mean, you guys were just amazing. The three of us, we gave out so many winners that I had to stop using the cash register sound on the videos because I broke it. That's how many winners we had. I mean, think about it. I think we had on the wild card, because there was more games, of course, I think we cashed like 11 tickets and there were 4 games. There were 4 games, we cashed like 11 tickets. And then last week, we nailed them again. Now, I will say, ironically, I did not take the money out of Bitcoin, bet it on the money line and put it back in, but I did have the money line, and let me tell you right now, that money line that we talked about with a 10-point favorite, feels a lot better when the kid's on the ground and you don't know where he is. And Vicky called that. That was a tap out. Vicky called it that he was choking, and that wasn't a concussion. He basically got choked out, and we've seen it on Saturday nights on Fight Island. You know, you could choke somebody out, they could die. It's a very dangerous thing. There's only that little part right here where the air goes through. You cut that off, and it's not a good thing. And so it was very much nice knowing that I had that money line, because even that, as you saw at the end of the game, Wes, it got a little tricky, didn't it?
It did get tricky, and I tell you could hear a pin drop in this entire city when he went down. And I mean, you saw it on TV, the look in his eyes. And the one thing that the Chiefs cannot have happen is my homeboy getting hurt. And it was scary. And he does a lot for the community too. So on the human side of it, you know, it's a big deal to this city. I mean, they're going to name libraries and avenues after him around this city. So
$1 billion or something, for heaven's sake. Yeah, I would say you're important. The sad part about the NFL as we speak is that half of the teams don't have good starting quarterbacks. So yeah, you never want to have to play a championship game with your backup. That's just the fact.
No, and to the point you made and the point John made last week, the Chiefs don't cover spreads. I mean, I could say they woulda, coulda, shoulda, but if Mahomes didn't get injured, but that's not going to cash my ticket.
However, I will say I did load them on in the first half, just hoping, and I didn't bet them for the game. So I had the first half Chiefs for the game money line, and I really did. I was walking around the house like I was Nostradamus or something. My wife was getting sick of me. All right, so when we come back from break, we're going to go into talking about some UFC on Saturday. We got some horse racing. I'm not sure. We'll talk to John from GMF Sports Consultants. I'm not sure if he's a big horse racing guy. I know Wes likes the horse racing when the guy's in a chariot behind him. You're listening to Sports Betting Weekly on the Belly Up Podcast Network and the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Sports Betting Weekly.
You keep lying when you ought to be truthing. And you keep losing when you ought to not bet.
But what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the UFC, only because I've got some action. Now, if you remember, McGregor fought Mayweather, right? Back in the day. And that was a boxing match. And that, I remember we watched that at the studio. We had, I don't know, a handful of guys there. And it was funny because you could see him just kind of losing his energy as the fight went on. And Mayweather just playing with him, literally just playing with him, and then finally knocked him out. But then he came back and he got beat. Well, the last time he fought, he won in like 40 seconds. So they had him at minus 300, and I thought to myself, hey, if you like betting an over in a hockey game in the second period at minus 230, then why would you not bet McGregor at minus 300? Well, since then it went up to minus 320, so I'm hoping to get a little bit of my Bitcoin back. But so John, can you hear us now?
I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
So the question I had asked you is, do you ever give out UFC fight plays on for your guys?
I do once in a blue moon. I just don't follow it that closely. It's more of kind of an entertainment value more than a betting or an investment for me. I know a lot of guys, obviously McGregor is, the biggest name in UFC. So I'll probably bet it because I like Conor McGregor, the minus 300 or the 320, I'll probably wind up throwing in a parlay or something like that. But yeah, normally I won't do it just because I don't follow any of the fighters. I don't follow the trainers. So I just don't know it. And I always have this cardinal rule where if you don't know too much about the sport, if you don't know the players, don't bet it. But, I might throw a couple bucks on it. I'll probably wind up watching the fight at home, so.
Yeah, and again, that was the main reason I bet him is because I thought to myself, I don't have him straight. I did exactly what you said. I threw him with some parlays. Mm-hmm. And, it's funny because it takes the parlay and it kicks it up a little bit, but you end up getting even money on McGregor. Is what it would happen if you got to hit that. Of course, you got to hit the other parlay. So, and then, that'll be Saturday night, and that'll be cool because I always do the Belly Up Fantasy DC show with Dan and with Chris on Saturday nights here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network, and that'll be nice because it'll be right before that game, so that'll be a lot of fun. All right, so next we're going to talk about the first game on Saturday, and that is Tampa Bay at Green Bay. And we're going to just let John start.
That's a great matchup. Brady and Rodgers, two marquee names. So this is going to be a tough game. I'm taking Green Bay. I said it last week and the week before. I've been on the Packers kind of wagon. So I kind of feel obligated just to stick with them. That Tampa Bay defense worries me a little bit. They beat the Packers pretty good. I think it was in week 4, I think, when they played. So there is a little bit of a revenge factor. Green Bay is at home for this one. So we'll kind of see if the weather kind of plays any effect into this. I know it'll probably be cold. They were saying about snow. So we'll kind of see that. But Brady's used to playing in snow. I don't really think that'll affect him too much. But it's going to be a great matchup. I'm going to put, a little bit on Green Bay and then watch for those in-game live opportunities and take it from there. But both these games are really, really, really good. So it's a tough call, but I'm leaning Green Bay at this time.
What are you thinking, Wes?
Well, I'm on the opposite. I had Tampa money line last week, and I also had Tampa in that over 10.5 first half. So I'm going back to the well with the first half play. It's 12.5 this week, and I like that. I think that's a pretty safe one. But I think that Tampa's rushing attack has been really good the last few weeks, and I don't think Green Bay's going to give the ball to them twice in the first half like they did in their first meeting. But at the same time, I don't know that Green Bay is going to be able to run the ball well enough to keep the ball away from Brady, who's just red hot. And he hasn't even used the full extent of these wide receivers. And there was a lot of drop balls this past game. I mean, there was at least 14 points left on the field this past week. And I think that those catches get made this week against a much softer Green Bay defense. And so I'm on Tampa with the points, and I'm on some money line. Plus, I like them in the first half in this game. And I think it'll be really cool to see Tampa in a home Super Bowl with no fans in the stands.
Well, it is funny you mentioned that, and I didn't realize it until earlier this week that both these games are rematches. Both of these two teams have played earlier in the season. When you mentioned last week, you mentioned Tampa Bay, and of course, I also had that winner because I had the over team totals on all of them. But in the last 5 out of 6 in the first half, they've scored 13 or more. So the fact that it's at 12.5 is fine with me. But in the second half, they've also scored 13 or more in 5 of the last 5. So that's a pretty balanced offense. And of course, in those 5 games, every single game, they've scored over 30 points. Now, in their last 9, not one person, not one team, not one NFL organization has scored 28 points or more. In the last 9 games, Tampa Bay has allowed 27 or less. Now, when I start seeing 7, 8, and 9s in what a team's doing, that's consistent because there's home games there, there's away games, there's a little bit of everything there, and those are pretty good numbers. When I looked at Green Bay in the first half, they have scored 14 or more in 12 of 12. So that instantly, I'm leaning towards the over and doing the same thing I did with the Tampa Bay game that didn't work out as well as I would have liked because, of course, all those picks. It's really hard when you have 3 interceptions to get any points on the board. And, of course, neither their team total nor the over for the game was a winner last week. But that first half was really nice because I had loaded up on that first half over, and it was 25.5. So that last field goal that made it 13-13 made it a winner for me. So that was pretty exciting. Getting back to Green Bay, in the second half, they allowed 10 or less in 4 or 5. In the game, they allowed 24 or less, 6 or 6. And in the game, they scored 30 plus 7 or 8. So what you got is you got 2 good teams that are used to scoring and not letting the other team score. And as we both know, or all 3 of us know, when you have teams doing the opposite, only one of those things can come true. And that really is one of the main reasons that I'm going to put some little stuff in for this game, but I'm going to do what John says and what Wes does all the time. I'm going to spend a lot of my stuff doing live action and really allow, like you said, what if Tampa Bay scores first, right? And they're getting points. All of a sudden, if you do like Green Bay, you might be able to get them getting 1.5 points. I mean, there's all kinds of things you like. If Green Bay scores first, say Green Bay goes up 10-0, given that 3.5. That Tampa Bay money line is going to go a lot higher than it is now. So those are the reasons why I really want to pay attention to the game and to the live action. We got any update on that Tampa Bay Columbus hockey game?
It's still 1-0 Columbus. Tampa Bay's been. I mean, they had a lot of chances. I can't believe the goalie for Columbus is doing pretty good because they've been on them. But it's still 1-0.
As Wes says, those will come in flurries. I mean, I told you a couple weeks back, one of the guys gave me the play of the over, and it was like 2-1, and the over was 6.5. They ended up scoring 8. So they scored 5 goals in the last 20 minutes. And remember, in any sport, in the very end, when you're tired, things change. In basketball, when you can't get that leg extension because you're tired, the shots don't fall. In hockey, I've never played hockey. I've skated a little bit. I grew up where it was cold and they had ice skating rinks, so I moved to San Diego. But I do know that hockey is really hard to play. And boy, you got to think after 60 minutes. That's why when you see those playoff games that go – last year, didn't they have a 7-period game or something like that, Wes?
It was like 7 or 8 periods. It was actually close. I mean, it was over 2 full games. I think it might have been Boston, Tampa. It was Boston was involved in it for sure. I don't remember.
You see football players cramping up in the second quarter. These guys played 160 straight minutes of hockey. It's just amazing.
And then they play again tomorrow.
Yep. All right, so when we come back from break, we're going to talk a little bit about horse racing. John, I don't think I've ever talked to you about horse racing. When we were in Vegas together, I don't think I bet any horses. I almost always are going to have some action on the horses during my trip. A lot of times what I like to do is I get the racing form for the plane. It's an hour up and down the mountain, so it's not a big deal. But by the time you get to the hotel and stuff, you've had a time to go through a few of the races. So I won't have any plays for this weekend. But John, do you ever play the thoroughbreds at all?
I used to be a pretty good, decent amount of my plays used to be thoroughbreds when I first started off. Number one is because you can go in with a couple dollars, minimum investment to reward. And I started when I grew up in New York, they had the OTBs. They were kind of like little almost office fronts where you walk in with the little screens. And I was just fascinated by it. because you used to have all these guys in there screaming and yelling at these little TVs. So ever since that kind of stuck with me, back on my East Coast days and everything like that. But I used to follow it. Right now, I don't follow them, but, I used to follow the jockeys and the trainers and obviously the horses that play certain tracks. You kind of follow them and you get to know, how they run and stuff like that. So I haven't really followed it in quite some time. I'll throw a couple bucks, just for fun for the Derby and the big races now, but I haven't, got really into it for probably a couple years now.
Yeah, that's my favorite Seinfeld is when Kramer's at the OTB. Yeah, we grew up where, we were hanging around the OTB. My favorite story, this slides over into a West segue, is the OTB would close at 8 o'clock. Or 9 o'clock, I think. And the first race from Yonkers was at 8, and the second race was at 8:30. So, like, 4 of us would each throw in $5. We'd have $20, and we'd each pick a horse in each race, and we'd go back and forth with the 2-horse partial wheel on the daily double. And one night it hit, and one of the guys' horses paid like $30, and we walked out of there with like $300. We put in $5 each. We had like $75. We went to a club downtown New Haven. I think we paid $20 each to get in. I forget who was. It was we get some good bands on the stage. I forget who was in there, and we drank all night long, and I think we all came home with like $15 in our pockets. So it was one of my greatest horse racing stories. So Wes, I know you like to trot. Will you do anything on the thoroughbreds when it's $1 million race?
Yeah, of course I will. I'm really looking forward to this card, actually. So when you said we were going to talk about it, I was pretty excited. The big race, I'll play a super for sure. But normally when I bet the horses, my favorite thing to do is I just bet to show. I'll throw a unit to show and just keep cashing the tickets and hope to catch 20 to 1 that pokes his little nose in there for third. And then I get a couple of those, and I might go win, play, show. Very rarely do I throw money at the gimmicks, unless I'm winning pretty good and I like the races. But I'm looking forward to this card. I spent a good amount of time on race 12, and I know that 10 on paper looks pretty good, but I don't really like the jockey change, so I threw the 10 out. In the Pegasus, I'm looking at the 6 over the 487.
Well, it's funny because that's actually a $3 million race. But what I do is I'll bet any race, but I really like to if I'm going to invest the time, and really it's harder to handicap for me a horse race than it is a football game, because the horses got so many variables, so many things to look at. But it's a $3 million race, the final. The race before it is $1 million, and the 2 races before that are $350,000. So this is a $3.35 million pick 4, and that's the kind of quality races that I'm looking for. Horse racing has too many tracks, not enough horses. It's got all kinds of problems. Pete is the least of their worries, really. But when there's 6 horses in a race, and there's a 9 to 5 and a 6 to 5 and a 7 to 5. I'm only betting that race if it's the last race out the door and I'm leaving the casino for the airport. But tomorrow I will have pick 4s, or Saturday I will have pick 4s. And what I look to do is I look to go slow. But that show bet that you mentioned, I'm telling you right now, if you got a bunch of guys and you're just hanging around and you're in a sports book and you want to have fun, put in a show pool. Throw $20 in each, kind of like that story with the daily double, and then you all get together and you agree on one horse and you just let it ride, and you let it ride. And like you said, all it takes, Wes, is your horse to come in third and the favorite to come in fourth.
Yeah, and that is all it takes. And just a quick update: Tampa is now up 2 to 1. So what I like very much about that number
they scored twice.
This is because they're the defending world champion.
They scored twice. Oh, there you go.
They scored twice.
Yeah, I like that.
Twice in 2 minutes.
The question you asked last week: when does the goalie get pulled? I think that Columbus going against the defending world champion, if it stays 2 to 1 late in the third, that goalie's coming out, and 2.5 over. I mean, that's there. But Tampa's probably going to stuff another one home before this second period's over.
So the 1.5's already a winner.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep,
so
Tampa Bay's got
yeah,
2, so that one cashed.
He cashed already.
Already cashed, yep.
Yep. The 2.5 is live. The plus 140 is looking good, and I got 3.5 on that over, so I need to go by anybody.
Yep.
So in a perfect world, a 3-2 final, Tampa would work for everybody, right?
Sure
That's
would.
right. Everybody wins. Everybody wins.
I was sad getting off the air giving out picks. That's why we want people to watch the show. We're giving them winners right this second. And then I was kind of sad. And then, of course, Gonzaga made me feel a lot better. So when we come back from break, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Pegasus. The big race is a $3 million race. We're going to talk about the later game, which, of course, is those Bills at a steak dinner at the Kansas City Chiefs. You're listening to the Sports Betting Weekly. We're on the Belly Up Podcast, Belly Up Sports Podcast Network, and the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
At championshipfootballs.com, they offer a 100% money-back guarantee on every single souvenir football that they sell. The coolest present they'll open that day, guaranteed. There's nothing worse than trying to find the right gift for somebody that already has everything. Whether that special present is for a New England Patriots fan or an Ohio State Buckeyes backer. Maybe Gramps is a lifelong New York Giants supporter. Or your brother-in-law is a 12th man living in Seattle. Know a member of the Michigan State Alumni Association? Is there a better Father's Day gift for someone who's a Baltimore Ravens fan? Send them the coolest present they'll open that day, guaranteed. Now, if your favorite pro team is the Buffalo Bills or those Minnesota Vikings, well, they're sorry about that. Also, if you're a New Mexico State Aggies or Tulane Green Wave alumnus, not much they can do. After all, the name isn't nice effort, you had a pretty good season, footballs.com. The name is championshipfootballs.com. The coolest present they'll open that day, guaranteed.
Hey, this is an important message. I'm Second Half Chaz from Sports Betting Weekly. Sports betting is supposed to be a hobby. It's supposed to be fun. If you're hurting yourself by gambling with money you don't have, check out our website for the Gamblers Anonymous phone number.
When Vince Young scored on 4th and 5 in the 2006 Rose Bowl, two things happened. The Texas Longhorns won the NCAA title, and ChampionshipFootballs.com was born. From Texas to Alabama to Ohio State, and now for Super Bowl winners too. ChampionshipFootballs.com is the place for the coolest present they'll open that day, guaranteed. Now, 10 years later, ChampionshipFootballs.com has the autographs too. See if any of these names remind you of a special time in your football life. Michael Bennett, Lou Holtz, Joe Montana, Devin Smith, Jameis Winston, Rocky Blyer, Rocket Ishmael, Ara Parsegian, Mike Stonebreaker, Chris Zorich, Luther Bradley, Todd Light, Tony Rice, Lawrence Taylor, Dave Casper, Marcus Mariota, Rudy Rudiger, David Tyree. Enter the promo code RADIO and you'll instantly save $50 on any of the ChampionshipFootballs.com autographed footballs. ChampionshipFootballs.com. The coolest present they'll open that day, guaranteed.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Sports Betting Weekly.
Sit back and enjoy the show.
Welcome back to Sports Betting Weekly. We are talking horse racing now. You had mentioned a few numbers to me, Wes. I do have the early entries here for race 12, the Pegasus World Cup Invitational Stakes. It's a grade 1 stakes race. It goes at 1 1/8 miles, and it's got a $3 million purse. Now, you mentioned Code of Honor. You don't like Code of Honor, you said.
I don't like the jockey change, especially the quality of jockey that that's been on him in the last 4 races. I don't like that horse. I'm not in this position. Plus, there's a little bit of travel that just made me look the other way. I think that there's some value, and I really like the 6. Kiss Today Goodbye. It's a California horse, which is typically faster, but at the same time, I like Mike Smith, and he's, outside of Rosario, Mike Smith is the best jock in the race.
And you named the other numbers. Give me those other numbers.
So I'm playing Win Play Show on the 6, and then I throw in the 4, 8, 7 into a box for a try and a box for a soup. With
Tax and Nick's Go. And
yep.
What What's the fourth horse?
The 487.
Oh, 487 underneath the 6. So 4, 6, 7, 8.
Yep. Yes,
yeah,
sir.
I'll be getting the Racing Point tomorrow, and I normally I've had a lot of success when I put my plays and the horses out there, and I always tell anybody that gives out plays on the internet, I appreciate how hard it is to handicap, get your bets in, and then take the time to to go and let other people know, especially now that there's live action. Because in the old days, what good was you telling me you like Tampa Bay, in the game, if the game's already started? But those days are over. And of course, if you like Tampa Bay and they're down 1-0, boy, that's even better. So, all right, so we're going to go to Sunday's game because he is a Kansas City Chiefs season ticket holder. They are playing in Kansas City. Vicky asked me, "Are you going?" But you didn't get tickets for the beginning, right? But did they do anything for this, or what did they do?
They offered me the package, at pretty much the same price, but it's an odd thing because normally I would sell the first round of the playoffs because at this point, 3 years in a row, we expect to be in the conference championship. But there's odd restrictions. You have to buy your tickets in a pod, and I was able to get my seats if I wanted them, but it's a pod of 4. So, and I can't sell it unless I sell it to a group committed to taking 4, and a little bit different with StubHub and everything else. So no, I'm not going to the game. And there's too much risk out there. I want to do the right thing and put this Rona business behind us.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it that trying to stay alive as your number one goal is very draining. And I'm not talking about being in Afghanistan or, on the front lines of a military coup. I'm talking about just sitting in my house in San Diego and having to put up with people that are stupid and do stupid things. And when there's alcohol involved, the stupidity of the human race goes up quite dramatically. So I could imagine that. But let's talk about the game. Wes, what do you see?
So I did a lot of breakdown on this, and it's a 3-point spread. So basically, you're either taking money line dog or you're laying the 3 on the favorite. But I took the 3 best quarterbacks that the Chiefs played against this year, which I think we would all agree are Drew Brees, Tom Brady, and Josh Allen. And when I looked at what the Chiefs did in that game, a lot of people want to dog the Chiefs defense, but the Chiefs averaging in those 3 games against the best quarterbacks were 166 rush yards and held their opponents to an average of 74 rushing yards. And they owned the time of possession 27-23. And if you're going to beat Mahomes, you've got to keep him off the field. That Buffalo defense is not very strong. And the last time the Chiefs played Buffalo, they didn't have Le'Veon Bell. They weren't playing him. He wasn't used to the system. And Edwards-Helaire hung over 150 yards on them. So I like the Chiefs in this game. If Mahomes is able to even crawl on the field, I like the Chiefs in this game. I just don't think Buffalo's going to have enough defense to stop them. Buffalo had 10 possessions last week and only scored 3 times. The Chiefs, minus a kill-the-clock kneel down and a missed field goal, they scored on 5 out of 8 possessions. So there's really no stopping them.
All right, John, what do you think?
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I'm going to be on the Buffalo money line situation, and also I got, like I said before, steak dinner on this game. But I feel the same way. Buffalo's defense, I think they're going to have to send some pressure to Mahomes. I was watching, especially the first half. Cleveland got stuck at where they were playing such soft zone defense, and Mahomes was able to read that and pick them apart, no problem. I think that Buffalo is going to have to start sending some guys in blitzes. Maybe the foot issue, maybe get him moving out of the pocket. But if you give Mahomes time, he's going to eat you up. And so this, on the flip side of that, Josh Allen is going to have to, keep getting first downs, keep Mahomes off the field. That's really the only thing you can do. Granted, if he's healthy, you have to keep Mahomes off the field and limit their possessions. And obviously they're going to have to score touchdowns, not field goals. So we'll see if they're going to be able to bring any pressure and what that pressure does. But if they're just sitting back playing this kind of weird soft zone on them, Patrick Mahomes is going to eat them up, and I think it'll be a long day for him.
And it's funny because last week with Buffalo, they didn't even fake like they were. My wife Vicky learned the word play action. She was watching the Showtime or HBO that show. So I tried to explain what play action was. And I said, basically, play action is when you fake a run and throw a pass. But to do that, you got to have the run. They weren't even putting somebody in the backfield with them. They were just sitting there throwing the ball to him. But you know what? I don't know, Wes, the Chiefs' defense in the backfield, they're pretty good, right?
The Chiefs are really good against the pass, and it's usually because they put the opposing team in predictable situations. So they're really good against the pass. They can sack the quarterback. Another fun fact about this game: the last time the Chiefs played Buffalo, Kelsey only had 20 yards, and Hill had like 35 yards. The Chiefs defense, they can get after the quarterback, and it's because they jump on top. Now you got to pass to catch up, because if you're putting up field goals and they're putting up touchdowns and they're taking 9 minutes to do it when they choose to, you have to, and their defense is just in positions to win. So,
yeah, I'm looking at this game, and I haven't made a decision on this game yet because, as John mentioned, I've been riding Buffalo, and they've really won a lot of games for me. So I really like him. That Buffalo and over, when we were in Vegas, and that Buffalo and over parlay came in, and we won all that money. We were at the MGM at Wolfgang Puck's restaurant, and it was just you don't forget moments like that, and they really do. Those teams, you don't want to get emotional. You want to keep your bets level-headed, but it's really hard when you like somebody and they've won you money. But and Kansas City, look what Kansas City against the spread. Even though they covered the first half and the second half last week, right, against the spread. No, they covered the first half last week. They didn't cover the game in the second, but they covered the first half. So their numbers went up because remember it was like 3-19-2 or whatever it was, So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But what I wanted to do is spend some time talking about my favorite bet this time of year, which is the prop play of the first touchdown scored. Now, what I'll normally do is I'll look to isolate somebody, and then I'll not only bet them to score the first touchdown of the game, but I'll also bet them to score the last touchdown of the game, and I'll also bet them to score their first touchdown for their team. Now, the first and second one, the first touchdown of the game and the last touchdown of the game, they're going to be pretty much the same odds, where the first touchdown for their team is going to be less odds, but it allows you to at least have a ticket open. And there was a game this weekend, right, where there wasn't a touchdown in the first half. This past weekend, wasn't that the case? I think it was. I don't remember which game it was, but it was. I remember saying to Vicky that if you had the first team to score, you were nervous. Oh, it was the Baltimore-Buffalo game. Baltimore and Buffalo were tied at 3 at halftime. So here's some of the stats that I took for my notes on the first player to score. In their last 3 games for Tampa Bay, Fournette's the only person on the roster that has scored twice, 2 or more touchdowns in a game. What's up with Mike Evans' health? Does either you know, John, do you know about Mike Evans?
I haven't heard. I know he's kind of been questionable with certain injuries. I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago he kind of had that weird awkward thing with his leg. I think they tried to throw him a touchdown and he wound up like I think he got his foot stuck in something with his leg or his knee possibly. I mean, he looked fine, but I still obviously think he's not 100%. I'm pretty sure he'll play, but to what extent he'll be, even if he's at 50 or 60, you still got to put him on the field if you're Tampa Bay, just because he's that good. But yeah, I think he had some type of knee damage, if I remember correctly.
Right. Then I went to Green Bay, and Green Bay has Adams, right? Adams has been pretty good. He's got 18 touchdowns. He's got more touchdowns than anybody else, receiving or running, of the rest of the 4 teams left. Then I went to Buffalo, and Diggs has 5 touchdowns in his last 3 games. But when I went over and I looked at Kansas City, and again, I'm not going to tell Wes anything he doesn't know already. In their last 3 games, they've only scored 7 touchdowns. Buffalo had 8 alone in week 17. Now, one of them was a pick six or a scoop and score, but they had 8 touchdowns. So their offense, Wes, is definitely not clicking. There's no doubt about that.
No, which is scary because they're doing enough. The value in this game, if we're looking at players to score for their team, just an anytime scorer, take a look at Sammy Watkins. He's on the practice field for the first time in a little while, and he played for Buffalo, and he did not play the first game against them. And Andy Reid, he's got an ego, and he knows that his guys do, and he wants to give them the opportunity to stick it to. His players love him for a reason. There's probably a good value play on Sammy Watkins being an anytime scorer because Buffalo tied up Tyreek Hill and they tied up Kelsey pretty good. I think you'll find value on Sammy.
Yeah, and that's another play, and that it doesn't matter when it comes. It doesn't matter when it comes. It's anytime. That having that first one though, it really if you have a wide receiver and he catches the ball and gets knocked out at the 2, you're done. If you have a running back and the wide receiver gets knocked out at the 2, you're in good shape. And it's the same way because all of these quarterbacks are not necessarily the same. But Mahomes can score touchdowns. We know Buffalo, he's one of the leading rushers for touchdowns on their team. Rodgers can score, and Brady had a touchdown in the last game. So you never know. You never know. All right, anything before we go, John, from GMF Sports you can think of?
Nope. I'll just be continuing to watch this third period of this Lightning game here, and hopefully they get you another score, and hopefully Lightning wins this game. So that's about it.
We have in our live action, we have Tampa Bay for the game. Now they were down 1 when we bet them. We got over 1.5. We've already cashed. We got over 2.5, and then I got another bet of 3.5 for the team over. So we'll see what happens. Blackhawk West, before we let you go, anything?
No, I mean, I think we covered a lot. Let's cash some tickets this weekend. A lot of action with these horses and championship Sunday. And, I'm looking at, for the first time in a while, the Blackhawks against Detroit to kick the day off for me on Sunday. So it's going to be a good weekend. I'm ready.
Yeah, we love it. I'm Second Half Chaz. You've been listening to Sports Betting Weekly on the Belly Up Sports Podcast Network and the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. Always be cashing.